Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am. Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am. Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am.
To this day.
Nino Brown Boxing, and I'm back in the building. Shouts to LDBC. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe. Man, all right, guys. So, I see a lot of brothers talking about Terrence Crawford, and I decided to look at this Sway interview that took place yesterday. And my thoughts on it was, overall, it was a good interview. And despite how many others may feel, I like Terrence Crawford either way it goes. I feel like, me personally, I understand him. I understand his personality. I can relate to him in a lot of ways. Terrence Crawford, he said a lot of things that I feel like a lot of people, I guess they don't really process. I mean, Terrence Crawford was very clear when, if he don't like people, he don't like them. And he don't go out of his way to show otherwise. And I agree with that. I deal with that in my personal life on an everyday basis. But this is the shit that got me. Sway asked Terrence Crawford the perfect question that could have created a huge snowball effect of truth. And he asked the question, Terrence Crawford answered it extremely honest, but then he left it at that. And I'm just looking like, what the fuck, Sway? Like, you had an opportunity, but I guess it's just like us as hardcore boxing fans, we know how to follow up on it. But I can't even say a hardcore boxing fan, because to me it seemed like common sense. All right, guys, so I'm referring to Sway started, he segued into this question, and he started talking about sports, basically majority of the athletes being black, and a lot of the ownership is white. That's basically what it was. And he presented that question to Terrence Crawford to figure out his thoughts. Terrence Crawford, he answered the question honestly. Terrence Crawford said, hey, well, when it comes to boxing, the PBC, you know, that's black owned. They got Showtime, they got PBC on Fox, you know, that's a black owned thing. And then Sway just left it at that. I'm thinking to myself, Sway, if you're gonna bring up this question to Terrence Crawford, and you already understand based off of certain statements that were made earlier in the interview, Terrence Crawford spoke about PBC being black owned, and obviously you asked that question, you know, it's cultural related, it's the state of the black community, great. But why not ask Crawford? I was like, well, if you see what they're doing over there, and they look like you, and they're black owned, and you're saying like they're not recognizing this and they're not recognizing that, why aren't you over there with this black owned business that you're saying is doing great things? That should have been a follow-up question. Unless like this was discussed prior to this interview, I have no idea, but it seemed like that should have been the follow-up question to Terrence Crawford's honest response about black ownership in sports. He completely left that out, and like I was annoyed listening to the interview because like as a hardcore boxing fan, it was just easy ass questions that could have been asked to Terrence Crawford that could have brought a lot more clarity to things. Even for casual fans, it would have made shit make a lot of sense. Now, certain things would expose Terrence Crawford and put a huge spotlight on him, which I know he doesn't like, but he also said in the interview he always tells the truth, and we could have got some more truth out of him. So, another question was, he started talking about the whole Manny Pacquiao shit. And Terrence Crawford talked about how Manny Pacquiao moved around and he maneuvered. Terrence Crawford would say he was going to move up. Manny Pacquiao said he was going to move down, and Manny Pacquiao chose to fight other people. But Terrence Crawford failed to mention in the interview that Bob Arum was on record stating that he protected Manny Pacquiao from Terrence Crawford. And once again, that would have brought us back to, well, Terrence Crawford, why are you with ESPN and Top Rank? Why aren't you over there with the PBC? It seems like the PBC, all the black guys, have a good relationship when it comes to making fights, when it comes to communicating, when it comes to doing business with each other. But you're the only one that's not a part of it. Now, you can talk about the side of the streets that don't exist, but even with that, Terrence Crawford didn't tell the full story. Terrence Crawford mentioned Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury as an example of why the sides of the street don't exist, when actually it's the contrary. I say that because when he mentioned Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, he was like, oh yeah, for a second time. Well, the first time the fight took place, Tyson Fury was not with ESPN. He was not with Top Rank. ESPN Top Rank inserted themselves and created a side of the street for Tyson Fury to run over to, away from the Deontay Wilder immediate rematch. See, Terrence Crawford, you're leaving out details, and I don't know because you're misinformed or you just didn't receive all of the information. You're only telling it based off of just the minimal information that you received. But the reality is Tyson Fury, associated with ESPN Top Rank, at this point in time, December 2019, has never put on a fight with Deontay Wilder. But it still brings us back to the question that Sway introduced about black ownership in sports. Why aren't you with the black ownership in boxing? To me, that's the number one question of the interview that was not presented to Terrence Crawford, and it could have definitely changed the entire landscape of this interview. Now, Terrence Crawford said a lot of things that I understand, a lot of things that I agree with. Do I feel that if a fighter says that, oh, they go to their promoter, they go to their manager, and they say, oh, I want this guy, the fight will get made? But the reality is, when it comes to the welterweight division, the PBC still have other fights that can be made that do not include Terrence Bud Crawford. The PBC still has belts that can create additional unification bouts that does not include Terrence Bud Crawford. The PBC, they are choosing not to recognize the WBO. Like, Terrence Crawford cannot go into depth explaining why the PBC isn't recognizing the belt that he has, because the people during the interview didn't even understand the concept of sanctioning bodies in the first place. So the lady interviewer, I don't remember her name, but she presented a question where she doesn't understand why wouldn't his next fight be against the current champion. Obviously, she has no knowledge, and she mentioned this, so it's a lot of casual fans, and they don't understand this, but she mentioned, why can't, like, it doesn't make sense that you're a champion and then the other guys that have belts aren't his mandatory. So if she doesn't understand the basic concept of sanctioning bodies and ranking structure, and that one champion in a sanctioning body can't be ranked in another sanctioning body, how the hell can she ask the question, well, why don't they recognize the WBO as a sanctioning body? See, then if Bud is going to continue his trend of honesty, a lot of the fuckery associated with the WBO and other weight classes would have been exposed. But the interviewers, they didn't do a deep dive into actually what's going on in the state of boxing. And Bud being Bud, his personality, he's not going to just voluntarily divulge a bunch of information. See, he spoke on the fact that a lot of people and a lot of organizations want him to act out of his character and not be himself. And he said he prides himself on being himself. He's Terrence Bud Crawford from Nebraska. That's who he's going to be, and that's how he's going to act. And that's great. But I feel like take advantage of Bud being Bud and ask him those tough questions about the fuckery that's associated with the WBO. The fuckery that's associated, like Bud introduced the Deontay Wilder Tyson Fury fight. Well, Sway, why didn't you ask Bud Crawford, well, why wasn't it an immediate rematch? Why did ESPN sign Tyson Fury and take him away from an immediate rematch? So it's just a lot of shit could have been asked to Bud Crawford. And to me, I feel like that's the fault of the interviewers, because when it comes to this topic, they're ignorant. And the best interview couldn't be made. I don't know if it's due to a lack of research. I don't know if it's just due to a lack of exposure to what actually goes on, or if this was discussed prior to the interview. They're not ignorant at all, and it was basically saying the only way this interview is going to be done if we don't cross certain thresholds, and that's how they took it. So that's just my take on the interview, guys. I was going to look at this interview with Terrence Crawford and Andre Ward, But ultimately, I feel like it's a waste of time because it's definitely going to have like this ESPN top ranked cloak over it. They're not going to divulge too much. Andre Ward is aware of a lot of things that go on in the sport of boxing, and he's definitely going to maintain his pro ESPN position. So a lot of the tough, real questions won't be answered. So, yeah, man, that's just my take on that interview, guys. Ultimately, like I said, I understand Terrence Crawford as a person. To me, he's very relatable. He does his own thing, but the thing that exposed Terrence Crawford the most in this interview was when Sway presented the question about black ownership in sports, and Terrence Crawford told the truth. But Terrence Crawford isn't associated with the black ownership, and that's what I find to be the most ironic part of all of this. It's Nino Brown Boxing. Shout out to the LDBC, and I'm out.